Chapter 5. Yankuba was planning to marry Fatmata, the daughter of Mama Balu, who was a friend of Yankuba's mother. This was the latest rumor among the teachers in the staff room, and it unsettled Makalay's mind. She tried, unsuccessfully, several times to trace the source of the rumor and to find out whether it was true or false, but she met one dead end after another. She dared to ask Yankuba once and held her breath as he gave her one of his searching no-nonsense looks, then walked off as though she had not spoken at all. It was so humiliating that, for a fleeting moment, she hated him and almost slapped his face. The most frustrating part of the rumor was that Yankuba did absolutely nothing to kill it. He went about his daily routine, whistling and humming an I don't care tune that infuriated Makalay. She found she could neither teach properly nor concentrate for long when marking the exercise books of her pupils. Her mind kept running off course to Yankuba and Fatmata. Who was she? Was she pretty? Was he really in love with her? No one could pretend true, genuine love when they behaved like a butterfly, going from one flower to another. Makalay's heart was still sore when she thought of Yankuba. She was chalking up on the blackboard some exercises for her class when a movement caught the edge of her vision. She turned slightly to her left and, looking out of the low window, she saw Yankuba standing with a young woman at the foot of the silk cotton tree. Her heart thudded, and she suddenly knew, without any firm reason, that the woman was Fatmata. She was beautiful, but only by village standards. Makalay was consoled by this thought, but furious with Yankuba for standing so close to the woman whose face was lit up with love. Makalay's heart twisted at the sight, then she hated herself for feeling that way. She spun from the window to face the class and snorted in angry disgust. Her pupils looked up fearfully. She yelled at them to do the exercises that were on the blackboard and to stop staring at her. Then she walked back to the window, bit her lip and stamped her foot. Yankuba and the woman had disappeared. Where are they? Cried her heart. Has he taken her home? He wouldn't dare. Makalay felt like sobbing her heart out. Then she almost fainted with relief when she saw Yankuba walking back up the road, alone. For the first time she acknowledged and accepted the full force of her feelings for him. Now she had to find a way of making him thirsty for her companionship. Just when she thought she had enough troubles to give her grey hairs, a new teacher arrived at the school. He was a 26-year-old man called Siddiq. From the moment he clapped eyes on Makalay, he started to gaze at her with embarrassing boldness. One day in the staff room during lunch break, he left his table, came over to her carrying his chair, which he put down opposite her. Then he sat down uninvited, looked her over carefully, spread his elbows on the table and leaned forward with a smile he had practiced for endless hours in front of a mirror. He fooled himself that it was charming. Makalay eyed him as she would a fly that had dropped into her soup. Then, with a disgusted look that made her more desirable to him, she leaned back from her writing. Has anyone ever told you, said Siddiq, that you look like the dream of a lonely guy? No, Makalay shook her head, giving a fearful glance at Yankuba, who was busy with some work across the room. She hoped he wouldn't get annoyed with her for allowing Siddiq to sit so close to her. Has anyone ever told you, Siddiq croaked on, that you can capture a man's heart by one look from your powerful eyes? No, she again glanced at Yankuba and caught him giving her a disapproving frown. Her heart hammered. Then I'm the only guy with eyes in his head, Siddiq smiled like a fish, and I'm the only fellow with enough sense to recognize your remarkable looks. He narrowed his eyes to affect the sexy look he thought he had mastered in front of his mirror. Don't you agree? No, Makalay replied, thinking he looked like a giant frog. Surprised, Siddiq leaned closer. You are not saying I should leave you alone, are you? Because an artist, a genuine one like me, cannot stop the flow of inspiration at the sight of the eighth wonder of the world. Keep talking, muttered Makalay, noticing that Yankuba's frown of disapproval had grown deeper, and he was beginning to squirm in his seat. She decided that perhaps she had something going here, so was determined to make it look really good. She moved her chair closer to Siddiq, leaned forward with eager expectation, then swung back her head and let out a laugh as though she were having a good time, chatting with the most interesting man in the world. As Siddiq went on croaking, she flashed him a sweet smile, making sure Yankuba saw it. You want us to meet on Saturday? She asked loudly enough for Yankuba to hear. She widened her eyes. Why, that's all right with me. How about noon? Say we meet at the foot of the cotton tree, and then I could show you around the village. This apparent easy victory over Makalay overwhelmed Siddiq so much he almost collapsed, chin first, on the table, as his elbows gave way beneath him. He congratulated himself on the long hours of private rehearsals. On Saturday, at noon, Makalay waited under the cotton tree. She was waiting not for Siddiq but for Yankuba, whom she knew, as only a woman could know, would find an excuse for hanging around the area. Siddiq came up the road, strolling along with a nonchalant grin on his face. His eyes goggled at the sight of Makalay. He walked up to her. They chatted for a while, then Makalay decided to humor him by taking him toward the impressive church building and telling him what Yankuba had told her about religion in general. She felt wonderful, repeating Yankuba's words as though they were her own. But where was Yankuba? Her large eyes kept scanning the bushes and footpaths around for a glimpse of him. She began to doubt the wisdom of what she had done to him in the staff room, trying to make him jealous. Maybe she had only succeeded in distancing him from her forever and ever. Siddiq kept wrapping his hand around her waist. At first, she tactfully untangled it from her body, then as he cunningly persisted she began to tug and slap it off her. Then she saw Yankuba, and she almost yelled with joy. He was running, jogging toward them, shirt soaked and sticking to his body. Makalay was convinced Yankuba wasn't out jogging. He was out to spy on her. She was so enraptured with Yankuba that she didn't notice how carefully Siddiq had again wrapped his hand around her. Yankuba noticed and almost tripped. He righted himself and jogged past them. The moment he thought it was wise to do so, he turned around to watch Makalay and Siddiq. Because he was running backwards and not looking where he was going, he fell into a pool of filthy water with a loud splash. Makalay spun round and, seeing Yankuba struggling to his feet out of the filthy pool, raced to him, leaving Siddiq filled with furious envy. She reached Yankuba just as he was pulling off his shirt. She reached out nervously to help him take it off. "If you touch me," he growled like small thunder, "you'll regret it for the rest of your life." She swallowed, her large eyes fixed on him with unusual tenderness. I'm sorry you fell." She bit her lip and felt like wringing her hands. "Please, let me help you. Look, we can go home and I'd wash you." "Leave me alone." Yankuba glared at her for what seemed like a long time. "Your boyfriend is getting impatient. Go to him." "He's not my boyfriend." "Shut up. You hear me? Do you think I'm blind or a fool? You misbehaved yourself in the staff room with that nincompoop, making me look like some village idiot while you made a date with him to meet you under the cotton tree. Is this the kind of life you want to live, making people think that you are some cheap girl itching for a man, any man, to flip his fingers at you?" Hey. Siddiq stepped in front of Yankuba. "That's not the way to talk to a lady." Yankuba balled his fist and snarled like a dangerous dog. "Get out of here before I tear you apart." Siddiq shrank back, and as Yankuba kept a steady burning gaze at him, he turned and hurried off, cursing Yankuba and Makalay with a shake of his fist. "Why did you threaten him?" Makalay asked. "Don't tempt me beyond my patience, Makalay," said Yankuba. "I have suffered too long under your arrogant attitude." "And what business is it of yours?" she asked. "Don't you remember the contents of your last letter to me? Have you so easily forgotten that cultivating romantic expectations for me is unhealthy for you? Have you keep quiet?" Yankuba's voice had softened, without losing its firmness. "Now let's get this straight. I can't stand the sight of you flirting with another man. But you can stand the sight of yourself flirting with another woman." She watched his face set into puzzled lines. "Don't pretend with me. I know all about Fatmota, the daughter of Mama Balu." Yankuba broke into laughter, and Makalay felt so foolish she almost slapped him. "That girl." Yankuba chuckled. "I am not in love with her. My mother is only forcing her on me, sending her to meet me at school without an appointment. Be assured of this one fact. I am in love with only one person." He nodded at her. "You? But I'm not sure whether you love me enough to want to marry me. Or maybe you still think I am a Jekyll and Hyde, because I was once dishonest with you." They stood staring at each other on the road by the bushes. They spoke without words. Their eyes conveyed volumes of information to each other. You know something, Makalay said finally. I have met many men in my life but none. Don't tell me about them, he rasped. Don't ever tell me about the men in your past life. He looked at her for a thoughtful moment. Will you or will you not marry me? Look into my eyes, she moved her face closer to his, and tell me what you see. I see a shameless woman who doesn't know how to say yes without shrouding the answer with romantic mystery. He shifted his weight forward and kissed her in a brotherly manner on her forehead. You are the only woman who has ever made me think of marriage. Her large eyes fluttered. I'll tell my uncle about us. In fact, he already suspects we are in love. And I think he approves. Later, when they had parted, Yankuba made his way home through the woods. She's mine. He suddenly leapt in the air and let out a whoop of joy. She's mine. In a burst of rapture, he danced along the footpath like a chicken with its head cut off. When he finally reached home, Dura and Pose were pleasantly puzzled by the new look in Yankuba's face, and the bouncing way in which he now walked. He glowed from inner joy. And when he burst out the happy news that he was now ready to marry Makalay, their eyes popped out in pleasurable disbelief. So, what do you want from us now? Dura asked thoughtfully, to be on the safe side of Yankuba in case he sprung another surprise on them. Meet the headmaster, beamed Yankuba. You and mother can ask for Makalay's hand for me. Please don't delay. We have agreed to get married. Bless you, my son, Pose applauded, eyes brimming with tears of ecstasy. You are the blessed one of the village. May you live to celebrate 1,000 years and see your children up to the 10th generation. She wiped her tears away and lifted her eyes hopefully at Yankuba. What about Fatmata, Mama Balu's daughter? What about her? I thought you might want to marry her too. She's so nice and she adores you. Mother. Yankuba gave her a stern look. I never said I wanted 2 wives, nor did I say I'd like to marry Fatmata. I want Makalay and only Makalay. A month later everything was arranged. The engagement took place, a private ceremony that went almost unnoticed because it involved only the declaration of Yankuba's intention to make Makalay his wife. According to tradition, if Yankuba wished to practice it, he now had the customary right to borrow Makalay from her relatives, take her home with him, to keep his house and satisfy his sexual needs until she bore him either a child or children. Then the marriage would be sealed. Of course, Yankuba again affirmed his determination not to practice a trial marriage. Makalay supported his decision, and the headmaster put his stamp of approval on it. So, Dura and Pose withdrew the suggestion. They had not forgotten that Yankuba was against this tradition, though they had hoped the headmaster's support would change Yankuba's mind. We can help them get married, the headmaster said to Dura and Pose. But as far as the having of children is concerned to me, that's their private, personal business. It is not, Pose said. It is a family affair. All the same, I refuse to allow my niece to be involved in a trial marriage. I am willing to embrace your son as a son-in-law, but I will not permit Makalay to be used as a puppet. The marriage was therefore fixed to take place a month after the engagement. It was a Thursday, and the wedding ceremony was to take place at the headmaster's house, after sundown. On that day, Yankuba was seized with a dose of anxiety. Worried feelings kept crisscrossing in his stomach like butterflies flying in disarray. Twice he suggested to his parents that they should postpone the wedding to the following week, and twice they yelled at him to forget it. Pose dashed to her kitchen and made him some rice pudding. Here, drink this, she offered him a cup of the pudding. Everything is going to be fine. Yankuba took the cup but did not drink from it. He lifted baleful eyes at his mother. Makalay and I are prepared to wait. I am not prepared for that, snapped Pose. Then her voice softened, and she began to rub her seated son on the back. Drink, my son, she said. You are only nervous. It's normal. Why, I remember your father, when he was to marry me, he got so nervous he shook like a leaf. His own father had to use a stick to get him going. Hey, stop it. Dura burst out from his room. Don't start telling spider stories to the boy. Now go to the kitchen, I want a man-to-man discussion with my son. He refused to utter another word until Pose was out of earshot. Now go and get dressed, he said to Yankuba. I want to see you dressed before the elders reach here. Yankuba went to his room while Dura waited in anxious suspense, running a comb through the little knots of hair on his head. When later Yankuba stepped out from his room, Dura stiffened in shock. Then his jaw went slack in astonishment. Yankuba was neatly attired in a three-piece suit he had had tailored in Freetown when the going had been good for him. It was of navy blue material. He wore a white shirt and a red bow tie as background. He looked impeccable, but not to Dura, who blushed with shame, dashed to the door, and locked it quickly. I am happy the elders are not here yet, he muttered. What would they say in Sunda chiefdom if they see you in these strange clothes on such an important day? But father, this is the way men dress up in Freetown. Stop it right there. Dura's face twisted with anger. This is not Freetown. This is Pentkili, and I will not allow you to make my name a laughingstock. Get out of those ridiculous clothes and put on something that will make you look respectable. Yankuba went back into his room and pulled off his navy blue suit, piece by piece. Then he stood frowning at his wardrobe for what seemed like forever, unable to make up his mind about what to put on to look respectable according to his father's standards. Then his eyes lit up at the sight of his white, flowing gown and all the paraphernalia that went with it. When he finally emerged, hesitating at the doorway, his father's face brightened with pleasure. Aha, beamed Dura. See how respectable and responsible you look. Your skullcap perches well on your head. You have neatly gathered up the many folds of your gown on your shoulders. What a nice lace material. From your skullcap down to your muke shoes you are all in white. Dura was overwhelmed. I'm proud of you, my son, I'm definitely proud of you. Father, would it be possible for me to see Makalay before the wedding ceremony? No, why not? Yankuba seemed flustered. I want to discuss something with her before the ceremony. Dura shook his head. It is not done. It has never been done. It is against our tradition. Somebody has to start breaking it. That somebody won't be you. Dura's voice hardened. Don't spoil my day, Yankuba. Everything is going fine now, why do you want to spoil things for us all? I don't want to spoil anything. It is just that. I just need to see Makalay before the ceremony starts. An uncomfortable silence settled between them. They glared at each other as though in a battle of wills to see who was the more stubborn. Why do you want to see her now of all times? I want to. Yankuba hesitated. It's a private matter. Nothing is private between the two of you today. Well, all right then. I wanted to discuss with her whether she expects me to kiss her after we are pronounced husband and wife. Dura snorted. Don't be disgusting. You have so many abnormal ideas. Adults, kissing each other. Disgusting. He shook a finger at Yankuba. Just make sure you don't bring disgrace on my head by doing such an unclean thing in public. A knock sounded at the door. I think the elders are here. You better behave yourself.